Hey friends, my name's Stevie Taylor. Welcome to the Gig Life Podcast. My guest today is John Hardaker. John is a Sydney-based jazz, blues and rock guitarist, band leader, graphic designer, music blogger and music reviewer for Australian jazz. He formed and led the JHD Revival Band and now has a new modular group, the John Hardaker Direction, which he formed out of the need to adapt to the ever-changing Sydney live music scene. I always take a lot from our conversations and this one was no different. Enjoy. Cheers. I think we're rolling.
We're rolling?
John Hardaker.
John Hardaker, well pronounced.
Thank you very much. Welcome to the Gig Life Podcast.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you for having me in your home.
I'm honoured.
Beautiful home.
Thank you.
In lovely Croydon.
Yep.
And didn't need the umbrella.
Didn't need the umbrella,
Yep.
That's good for my shitty guttering problem, which is very unglamorous rock and roll. I'm sure Mick Jagger doesn't have guttering problems, but hey, I'm sure he has other problems.
If you don't know what we're talking about, John messaged me this morning saying, mate, when you get here, ring me and I'll come out with an umbrella because it's supposed to be raining and my guttering stuffed. And I said,
right. Don't ever tell anybody that.
Shit. Yeah. So, what are you up to, man? That's your latest project.
Okay, what am I up to?
Yeah.
Right, okay. So I've recently gone back to first principles, that being that, when was it? A number of years ago I had a power pop band called John Citizen, and we did a bunch of gigs around the place, which was really great fun. And it just got to the stage where I was, I'm sure many musos will relate to this, you get to the point where you care more about are you appearing in the music papers, are you competing with other bands, blah, blah, blah. And the music itself gets pushed further and further down the list, so it's about fourth or fifth on the list. Look, it's an occupational hazard for a band leader, which is fine. But I would become bitter about it, and I would look among my fellow musicians and I'd go, how come he got the gig and I didn't, blah, blah, blah. And it was really a bad place. Mm-hmm. And a little red light goes off in my head when that happens. So I stopped. I just stopped.
Yep.
And I would just sit around the house and I'd pick up the guitar and I'd just start playing, jazz and blues stuff, which was exactly the opposite of what I'd done in this power pop band. And I found I really, really enjoyed this stuff. I loved playing it. So I thought, okay, I'll get together a nice little trio to perhaps sit in the corner of some restaurant and just play bossa nova stuff or some jazz standards, which I just love them. I just enjoy that music. So that's fine. So, okay, within 3 years, it was a 9-piece, horn-driven, soul-funk blues band. So, okay, so much for that plan. But it was a wonderful band called the JHD Revival Band, which is a band I will always bless everybody who's ever been in it and remember it totally fondly. The reason I scaled that band back was that, trying to get gigs for a trio is hard enough. But trying to get gigs for a 9-piece band is hard, but it's compounded by the fact that you have 9 really great players in it. So if you're a great player, you're generally busy. So I'd get a gig and I'd go, okay, can we all do this gig? So a few couldn't, a few could. And it just wore me out. Hey, it's not their fault. Yep. I mean, Jesus, they're in-demand players, terrific players, So I thought, okay, I'm going to pull back. I'm going to pull right back and start back again, not quite playing bossa nova in the corner of a restaurant, but just back to a smaller unit, a modular unit. So I looked for a bass player slash vocalist. So I could do duos, I could do trios, I could do quartets, I could just build the band, but the smallest module would be the bass slash vocalist and me on guitar. And I found, a brilliant young vocalist called Lauren White, who's a fabulous bass player, and another young vocalist called Sarah Angel Home, who plays bass and sings. And I've been doing gigs with these people, plus drummers, a couple of drummers, Luke Robinson and Kat O'Connor. And just been doing exactly what I want to do, and it's an absolute pleasure.
Great. Now that we know what you're doing now, let's roll it right back.
Okay.
Right. So, were you born in Sydney?
I was born in Sydney.
Yep.
In 1957. I was born in Sydney in 1957. The house that we're in at the moment, that you and I are speaking in, is my family home. Oh. It's been my family home since 1960.
Right.
So I've lived in this house since I was 3 years old.
Fantastic.
58 years ago.
Yep.
It's always been my family home, which is bizarre, but that's just the way, it's just the way it has been. Yep. Which is fantastic. And grew up in this house with my parents.
Musical family?
No, that's a funny thing.
Not at all.
My mother was German, and being German, you just grow up with music. Classical music, of course, Mozart, plus also German European folk music. My father was one of the two people I've ever met in my life who actually disliked music. I've never met anybody who dislikes music, but my father actually disliked music. He found it an irritating noise. When my mum had the radio on, he'd ask for it to be turned off, which is very strange because everybody likes some kind of music, however crap it might be, or commercial or whatever it might be. There's something in music for everyone except my father and one other person.
And he never whistled?
He utterly disliked music.
Wow.
Yeah, which is very, very strange. He was British, and I don't say English. He was British because there's a bit of a difference. Because he was very stiff upper lip.
Gotcha.
He found music and art and stuff entirely just decorative. It was non-masculine, just decorative. And the irony of that is music and art are the two things that are the props of my life, which is very strange, I mean, I make a living out of art. I'm a graphic designer. But I also, music, I've played my entire teenage till now life,
Right, so you started in your teens?
Yeah, I started...
No.
When I first got a guitar when I was about 12 years old, and I wrestled with it. I had lessons, but the guy was teaching me Peter, Paul and Mary stuff where I actually just wanted to listen. I wanted to play Jimi Hendrix stuff, and I couldn't quite understand how my guitar, which was acoustic, didn't sound like Jimi Hendrix's guitar or look like Jimi Hendrix's guitar. And then I bought an electric guitar. A family friend made me an amplifier. Man, I wish I had that amplifier. It was a handmade valve amp from a kit out of an electronics magazine, and he encased. It was a project for him, and he encased it with one 12-inch speaker. He encased it in a gorgeous, beautifully lacquered wooden combo case that he'd built himself. And I got rid of this thing. God knows why. I'm still kicking myself, But it was most beautiful, and it would probably sound exquisite, like beautiful old valve setup, hand wired, all the boutique stuff, But I got rid of it like an idiot, like a kid. But still, I just couldn't figure out how this music was made. And for Christmas, my father always used to say, "What do you want for Christmas?" And I said, "I want a wah fuzz pedal." And he said, and he got me one, and it cost him and he told me that it cost him $12, and it had a wah, the worst wah I've ever heard, and definitely the worst fuzz I've ever heard. I wish I still had it though, because it had that vintage kind of crunch, like just a beautiful, a really ugly sound, but it would be a sound now that I think people would like seek out. It was
It's funny, people are starting to chase those old sounds again. Aren't they?
It's funny, isn't it? Definitely. And this was all I know was that I plugged it in and I put on the fuzz and the wah, and I just thought that's the sound I want. Yeah. Completely distorted mess, and I just, I loved it.
Yeah. And did you get lessons?
Yes, I did. As I say, I got Peter, Paul and Mary lessons with a local folk guy. I hated them. It was nothing like the music I wanted to play.
Yep.
We did All Along the Watchtower, but I thought, this doesn't sound like All Along the Watchtower, but of course he was teaching me the Dylan version, so I didn't get any lessons at all. And I think like a lot of rock and roll guitar players, you just sit in your bedroom and you just try and nut this stuff out.
Yep.
And every now and again you might get something that sounds a little bit like that. And then you go and get together with other people who are trying the same thing, And I was lucky to get together with a few local blokes, and we would, get together and try and suss out this stuff. And it's quite funny, I mean, even though now I have every guitar I would ever wish for, I have beautiful amplification, the gigs I do with brilliant musicians, through great PA systems, blah, blah, blah. But I will never, ever again get the same rush that I got from sitting in a garage and just making pretty crap noise with other people.
Yeah.
The rush was, just thinking about it now makes my hair stand up.
Awesome.
And I mean, we chase that our whole lives, but we get a little bit jaded along the line. But the first time you ever got together with a band, you're all plugged in and you just slammed away. Everything was wrong with it, but it was so beautiful. Awesome. So absolutely beautiful, it's nostalgia.
Yeah,
it's wonderful. Yes, so I didn't get any lessons until I don't know. I went to a record shop and I bought. It was an import record shop called Anthem Records in the Town Hall Station Concourse in Sydney. And it was imported records, and we would go there to get the heavy stuff because the local record shops never had it. So I bought an Allman Brothers record and a Mahavishnu Orchestra record called Birds of Fire. Mm-hmm. And the Allman Brothers record I instantly loved because it was blues and boogie and that stuff. The Mahavishnu Orchestra record, I had no idea what this was. I just blew my head off. Yeah. And somebody had said to me, "Oh, this is the guy you got to check out." Yeah. I hated it. I thought, what is this garbage?
Yeah.
This was before I ever smoked dope.
Yeah.
So I think drugs. Would never condone them, but I know in my own case, drugs opened my head up greatly to music.
Yep.
So I was probably about 14 or 15 before I ever took any drugs with the Mahavishnu Orchestra record. So I listened to it and I thought, I hate it, and I put it away. But it was always sitting there, kind of looking at me, so I would listen to it occasionally, and I ended up becoming transfixed by what is this and how is this music made? So somebody said to me, well, that's jazz. He's a jazz guitarist. And I thought, no, he's not. I've heard jazz, Louis Armstrong, that's jazz. He said, no, this guy's a jazz guitarist. So I listened to jazz guitarists like Wes Montgomery. I thought, no, John McLaughlin's nothing like that. And I think obviously now we know that they couldn't really put him in any pigeonhole. So they said jazz. It wasn't rock.
Right.
So they just lumped him in with all the weird sounding music, which was jazz.
And they didn't have all these little off genres that we've got.
No, exactly. They did. They had big block genres, big block. Well,
genres.
even the Allman Brothers had a lot of jazz in their play and a lot of Latin stuff. Beautiful stuff.
Yep.
And so McLaughlin. I thought, okay, jazz. I need to understand what this guy's doing. So I took lessons from a jazz guitarist, a local guy, and I thought, no, he's just teaching me this. We did a Mickey Baker book, which I refer to those chords to this day. I didn't realise that at the time. I thought it sounded hokey, but it was brilliant, beautiful, So we did this Mickey Baker book, and it was just, jazz standards, Honeysuckle Rose, etc. And I thought, no, this isn't what I want to learn. And I was in wedding bands at the time, and one of the drummers in the wedding band, in those days, you'd play all this disco stuff and all these wedding waltzes, but you'd talk to the musos, and we'd all be talking about Chick Corea and Hendrix and all this stuff, And this one drummer said, look, I've been in a band with John Robinson, and he can teach you this stuff that you want to know. And I remember John Robinson as a guitarist in the first version of an Australian band called Black Feather, and he was an awesome player, brilliant. Their album called At the Mountains of Madness is, to me, like one of the Australian psychedelic touchstones. Anywho, so amazingly enough, Robbo had just started teaching, and I went to him, and he gave me the shit. He gave me the knowledge. He gave me everything. He's like a guru, and he gave me so much stuff that my head was full, and I left him because I just couldn't take it all in. And I've still, to this day, I'm still thinking about concepts that he gave me, all the modes, all the arpeggios, all the modes based on overtone modes. It just goes on and on. It's not as mathematical as it sounds, but it's beautiful. And I still use these concepts to this day. I really do. And I bless him for all that wonderful stuff he showed me. But he just literally blew my mind. Yeah, so that was that. And really, I haven't had any lessons since, because he gave me enough stuff for a lifetime.
Yep.
For a lifetime, yeah. So that's it. That's my educational qualifications.
Yeah,
which is not much really, but it's good stuff.
Yep. And when was your first sort of gigging band?
First gigging band, I was these little wedding bands you kind of get into.
Yep.
You're learning from somebody, and then the teacher says, oh look, I can't do this gig, can you do this gig for me? And you think, wow, really, you want me to do this? And I didn't know what a gig was, so I'd show up with my little amp and my out of tune guitar, and I'd do it, and the guy would never use me again, but the drummer would say, oh, a guitar. So the network kind of happens. I think it's a lot more professional now than it was. Like back then it was, well, maybe I have no real idea, but back then I think it's people who just got stuff together, and I remember backing up a great singer called George Alexander, and he did a lot of stuff that at the time. Don't take offence if you're listening to this, George, but I thought it was the hokiest crap I'd ever heard in my life, and I loathed it, because of course I was in the Mahavishnu Orchestra and Hendrix and blah, blah, blah. But really, now, I'm so glad we did that stuff, because it was, what would you say, it was the early to mid-70s, so the music we were doing was all the disco stuff, Hot Chocolate, excellent music, really beautifully made music, and to sit down and actually try and figure out what that guitar player's doing, once again, I still use that stuff to this day, that choppy disco, and really disco, what's disco? Disco was like funk, where the producer said to the drummer, just keep the bass drum on the four.
Yep.
But you take the bass drum away and it's as funky as fuck, pardon the French, but it really is great stuff, So I had to learn all those great...
Just take the syncopation out of it, basically.
Basically it was, and it was just for the dance floor, but really if you start chopping up the bass drum, it's really beautiful, groovy funk, And also, round about that time, I bought a MXR Phase 90. And it's an effect I still use to this day, which is like 40 years later.
Right. The same one.
The same one. Yeah. Well, I've actually been through three.
Oh, okay.
Because one got water in it, one just died.
Yeah.
And each time I get a new one, it's not quite the same. So I'd like to get one of those first generation ones. But anyway, yeah, I use very few effects, and that's one effect I've just always really loved the sound of, you know. But once again, it's that sound of disco, you know, that great whooshy kind of choppy phase sound. Yeah, so those wedding band stuff, it was just really cool, you know, really good stuff to do, you know.
Yeah, and how was the 80s for you? What were you doing in the 80s?
What was I doing in the 80s? Having children, pretty much.
Okay. Yeah.
So my daughter Katie was born in 1984. Yep. My son Blair was born in 1988. When my daughter was born, I went, right, that's it, forget music. Mm-hmm. I'm stop being a kid, I'm just going to be a good dad, you know. So for about 4, almost 5 years, I sat around the house and playing guitar, and but you know, I was here for the Katie, my daughter, and I wanted to be a good dad and be part of the family and all that. And then one day my wife said to me, get out. Go and play music. You are miserable. You're making us all miserable. And I'm going, no. She said, don't argue with me. Just go and play music. You know. So I sort of started again. I got into like pub bands and just gradually kind of got my chops and all that. I didn't even have an amp. I'd sold everything except for one guitar. Yep. It was funny, but and I thought, really, am I that miserable? She said, oh yeah, you're miserable. You know, you're miserable. Just get out and play music. Yeah. Very funny. Yeah. And so from that point, which was probably 1989 or something, till now, I really haven't not played music, which is good. Yeah, it is good. Which is cool.
Yeah, and you're a jazz music reviewer.
I write. Yes, I do. And that just came about. Oh God, I can't even remember how that came about. Wonderful lady, Lane Elborn. She worked for. I can't even remember the blog site, but she said, oh, you want to do this review of his Joe Bonamassa concert and get you a ticket? And I thought, oh, I don't know, I can't really write. But I read a lot about music, you know, and I read a lot of music magazines. So I wrote this review, and then I'd written a bunch of reviews for various sites like the Orange Press and all that. So I thought I'd consolidate them on my own blog. And so I started a blog, God, I don't know, probably 9 years ago now, 8 years ago, and I just put all the things I'd written for other sites onto my blog, and then I thought I'd just start writing them for my own blog, you know, and then I'd send them to other sites, and it's almost entirely jazz now for one reason or the other, and they keep sending me these wonderful CDs, and I listen to them and I write them up. And I think, I just feel something like a big fat fake, because I think, really, I don't know do I know anything about this? And they always say to me, oh, that was I get this a lot from musos, and it enormously flattered in that they say to me, you know, you really heard me, you really listened to what I was doing. And I find that wonderful when they say that, because I thought, that's what I'm trying to do, and shouldn't everybody do that if I'm reviewing something, especially jazz, because jazz is a form of art music that is not apparently, you know, you can listen, you know, the point of pop or rock or blues is to come at you in a simple fashion, you know, and just hit you. Yep. Whereas jazz or modern classical music or any form of art music, and I'm making the inverted comma sign here, art music, it's deeper than that, you know, so you can't just blow it off by saying, well, that's just noise, you know. You have to respect these people, you know, and reading up about jazz, I'd read about, like, you know, people like Ornette Coleman would, you know, at the height of almost the height of his fame, he was still an elevator operator in New York. And I thought, this guy is willing to be impoverished for this music. You can't just blow it off as noise. You know, so I made an effort to try and understand this music, and I get sent some pretty challenging stuff, and I stick with it, and I never just listen to it once. Sometimes I do if I think I've got it, within one listen. But sometimes I think, no, I don't really get that yet. So I'll listen to it 2 or 3 times and it might grab me. If it doesn't grab me, I don't write it up. I don't believe in putting shit on any musician's work.
Just for the sake of...
I know as a musician the amount of work that's put into it.
Yeah.
You know, and really you can't just blow that off with a sentence, you know. Yeah. And I've had a few people who get a bit narky going, well, why didn't you review my thing? And I say, well, you know, it just didn't really, you know, float my boat.
Yeah. And
I say it's just a personal opinion. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean it has no worth. Of course it does. It's great music, you know.
Yep.
And there's a couple of people who've got a bit thingy about it. I understand that entirely because look, they've lived with this thing. They've sacrificed so much for this thing, and you know they don't want to hear somebody say it didn't really grab them. I never say it's bad music. There's been a couple of cases where it actually has been bad music, but very rare. It's almost always good music.
Yep.
But, you know, I mean, I run a business, I have a family, I have my own musical thing. I have very little time to really absorb this stuff, you know.
Yep.
And I don't believe in a 3-paragraph or 2-paragraph review. I want to get deep into it, you know. So it's more about sort of, you know, quality than quantity with me. So I can't really get to everything I would like to. It'd be lovely if I could, but, you know, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Now, when did you start forming your own bands? Because that's something that's how since I first met you, that's how I've seen you. You've always seemed to, you know, maybe not reinvent's probably not the right word, but you're always forming these new...
I am, yeah.
It's fucking cool, man. It's inspiring.
Well, yeah, it's funny, you know, sometimes I think to myself, you know, is it just like an ego trip? But then my wife, who's, you know, the wisest person I know, and I bounce a lot of this stuff off her, and she says, look, does anybody say to you, no, I don't want to play with you? Yeah. Does anybody say, no, bugger off? You know, do they play with you out of pity? No, they don't. They play with you because they want to play with you.
Yeah.
And I think I've had a couple of people say to me, you know, we like to play with you because you're organised. And you know, that could be taken, you sort of think, well, no, don't you mean creative and brilliant? No, organised. but that's a big part of it, you know. Yeah. And seriously, Stevie, I mean, the one reason I do organise my own stuff, even though it takes twice as much work as just being in somebody else's band, is because I've had such a bad experience with disorganised musicians, you know.
Right. Have you got a story you can tell? You don't have to name names or bands or... was there like was there a tipping point?
No, there wasn't a tipping point, but I know that a lot of the early wedding bands I was in... the early wedding bands, you know, the guy would just throw me a bunch of they weren't charts, they were sheet music bought from the shop, you know. And I would look at them and go, so you want us to do this exactly like the record, right?
Yep.
And they go, yeah, I do. And I think, can't we just, like, there's a fade out on this record. And he said, well, yeah, I want you to fade out exactly like the record. And I used to think, that's stupid. It fades out on the record because they're in a recording studio and the guy's turning it down. You're a live band. And I'd say to the guy, well, why don't we just repeat that little tag at the front of the song and just end on that? And he'd look at me like I was, and he'd look at me and he could see this cogs turning around his head, and he'd look at me and say, no, I want it just like the record. It was sort of like, you know, this goes up to 11, you know, there's no other way of thinking of it, you know. And so, and then I got in one of those wedding bands, and I made some suggestions, and one of the guys, I think this is a singer, the leader of the band, said, okay, well, what about on this song? What would you do on this? And I thought, oh, this is good. And it wasn't a case of saying, oh, these people are obeying my orders. It was a case of, it sounds better. It just sounds better.
Yep.
And this guy knew that it just sounded better, you know. So I sort of, so the next bunch of bands I was in were a little bit above a wedding band, but we're still doing covers, but some really good covers. But I was an absolute prick. I was a horrible person. I forgot that I was dealing with human beings. And I really, I would just give orders. And I don't know how I still got a couple of those people as friends. I'm surprised I have any of them as friends, you know. Because
What do you think that was?
I was a nerd. I didn't have a girlfriend. Music to me was everything. I'd sit in my room and I'd listen to Steely Dan. Or a band like Steely Dan. And then I'd go to my band and go, why can't we play this song like Steely Dan? You know, we do something like...
Did you realise at the time that song that you just listened to, that tracked 58?
No.
One drummer and then they put in another drummer
I didn't.
and tracked it.
Well, that's the exact... that's the whole point of it. I had no idea. We would do Josie, you know, and I'd go, why can't we get it as tight as that? And I'd say, and they were great players. Were great players, and they'd nail it as well as we could. And I would just be dissatisfied, and I'd insult people, and oh my God, you know, it was just absolutely awful because the music was absolutely at the top of everything. But it wasn't really the music, it was this kind of perfectionism. And perfectionism really it's a horrible thing. You know, Steely Dan, okay, it ends up sounding pretty perfect, but it's pretty soulful music in my opinion. At bottom, it's soulful, you know. I've heard some LA session stuff that is just perfect, and it is utterly boring, bland crap, you know, soulless garbage, you know. And I don't really know what shook me out of it all, because really, these people just kept coming back for more. No, that sounds terrible. The players, I think they could see that the band was really good and it was really tight, but I was an insufferable dickhead, horrible person to know or to work with. And I'm still proud of those bands, and I reckon that most people who were in them were proud of them, but it wasn't fun. It wasn't enjoyable, you know. So I think when I sort of stopped music entirely and then resumed it after my daughter was a bit older, I just got back into a pub rock band. Yeah, and it wasn't my band. It wasn't
how kids can level you out, you know.
Oh yeah, look,
because
definitely.
Before I had kids, I was fairly highly strung, and kids just change everything. Well,
they do. You know what it is, mate? It's
that's cliche.
My
cliche,
opinion,
but that's...
No, it's not a cliche. It's true because it grounds you in reality. You know, there's nothing more real than, my God, you know, having a child. And I would look at this child, and I mean, thank God my wife is just like so together, because there was moments when I thought, hang on, let me get this right. Me, who can barely look after myself, am responsible for keeping this little infant alive. And whenever I thought about it, and I had only recently actually started my own business. I started my own business 4 years before Katie was born. So, and really, you know, in business, like after 4 years, you're still not making $1 million, you know. And Gail, my wife, was supporting me. But of course, you know, she had to leave work. And I thought, man, you know, I've really got it going on now. And you just got to face reality. I mean, but there's nothing more real than children and you know, it's nature. It's the most natural thing. It's the only thing they haven't fucked up. You know, because as humans, we're the worst animal ever. We can't do anything without all our tools and our metal skins and our houses and all that stuff. We're pathetic. My dog, man, what a great dog, can see things miles away, can hear Mr. Whippy coming before I can hear it, you know, just wonderful. But as animals, we're just hopeless, you know. Yeah. So I had ran my business, and then Katie came along. And I thought, oh my God, you know. Yeah, so when I got back into music after that, I was levelled out a lot. You know, I really was. I'd kind of sort of beaten into submission by life itself. But I also realised that A, I wasn't the centre of the universe. B, I didn't know everything, and C, I just wanted to have a bit of a boogaloo with my mates.
Yep.
And these were buddies of mine, and we had this pub rock band, and man, you know, we did Creedence, great rock and roll songs, you know, Elvis, Creedence, just the rock and roll canon. And I thought, you know, fuck jazz, this is beautiful. I just and I listened into the Creedence stuff, and I listened into the Elvis stuff, and I thought, God, there's some good stuff going on here, you know. And it reignited my love for you know, like first principles, like going back to rock and roll, you know. Yep. Because even though I play stuff with a jazzy edge now, I'm really basically a rock and roll guitar player and a blues guitar player, and that's where my heart really is.
Yep.
I love the harmony of jazz and the colour that you can get with jazz. But, you know, honestly, man, you know, you play Elvis's Little Sister to me, and I just sit up, you know, because I think that's just, the tempo's great, groove is great, all the Elvis Sun Records stuff.
Got a cool guitar riff too.
Well, the guitar line is just, well, it is, and it answers the vocal line. Little sister, don't you? And the little sister whines at him, and so it's Elvis's talk. It's just the same, that beautiful blues thing of B.B. King and Lucille just talking to each other. You know, and honestly, you know, I've come back round, not quite full circle, but I realise now that, you know, people say, oh, you know, rock is easy, jazz is hard. That's garbage. It's all hard.
It's all hard.
Everything's hard. You try and play blues well, as blues should be played, and it's as difficult as anything else. You know, all the microtonal inflections, if they could analyse Buddy Guy's solo, it'd be full of this stuff you can't even write down. Just this beautiful vocal, oh God, you know. And I mean, so that's what I really love now, you know. I mean, I just love listening to these guys. You know, Eric Clapton is a great example. I've had a love-hate relationship with Eric Clapton my whole life, you know. I've adored the guy, and then sometimes I go, oh man, what are you doing? What's this crap you're playing? And then, you know, a year later I'm going, oh, listen to that, you know. Or,
so what sort of stuff made you think that was crap?
Oh, well, no, stuff that I thought was crap was when he subsumed his guitar playing to his songwriting, because you know, Tears in Heaven, that kind of stuff. Okay. You know, okay. I mean, and I think, you know, now I look at it and I go, no, he's great. That is good music. It's good music, you know. But I mean, Eric Clapton really inflamed me in Cream, obviously, you know. And even when he sort of got laid back with the I Shot the Sheriff and all that, he was still really nice guitar playing. And then I went off him for a while, and I watched a DVD of the band's The Last Waltz, and he's on there, and I know from his autobiography that he showed up and he was smacked out. He couldn't get enough heroin, and he was in a really bad way. And I listened to him play. I thought, man, if that's how you play in a bad way, I would love a little bit of that, because he just can't help himself. He's just got it in his fingers. He just puts on that Stratocaster, and he just a little bit of a trill here and a vibrato there. It's just this gorgeous sound. He's an exceptional player, you know.
There's a few videos that I saw when I was a bit younger that really shaped me too, and one of them was Eric Clapton 24 Nights.
Oh yeah, right.
VHS.
Yep.
And it was because I think he had there was 3 different bands for that 24 Nights sort of thing.
Yep.
And the one that really got me was he was playing guitar, Nathan East was playing bass, Steve Ferroni playing drums.
Yep.
Greg Fillinganes playing keyboards. They were doing old Cream stuff, and
I know.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
You know, and Steve Ferroni had the Sunburst Pearl drum kit, and I'll never forget it.
It's beautiful.
Eric Clapton had the wavy hair.
Yeah.
I used to just sit there for hours, and I'm sure I wore that tape out.
Yeah, look, I'm
just fucking.
And you know, it's funny to see those exceptional those players who you know, who've played at like the top level of everything. It's like when you see the Tonight Show stuff. You know, you get some rock and roller on there, and the band who can play anything. Yeah. They love it.
They do, yeah.
Because I think it takes them back to a kind of a root of why they got into music in the first place, you know. And I mean, I think you can never really lose that. You know, you shouldn't lose that, should you? I mean, it's why do we even play music, you know? And I think why I can't even remember why I was initially so inflamed, but I think it was Hendrix. And I mean, some people sort of talk about, oh yeah, I was into music when I was 8. Well, I was into model aeroplanes when I was 8. I only got into music, it only meant something to me, I think, when I was on the edge of puberty at like 12 or 13, you know. It seemed to link together with puberty. Prior to that, I was into Marvel comics and making aeroplanes, you know. But as soon as I got faint, yeah, it was, I don't know, it was like Girls and Are You Experienced seemed to happen at the same time.
Yeah, right.
And I went to a boys only school.
Okay.
So Girls were like off the menu.
Yep.
And Hendrix was like plugging into I listened to it the other day and I thought, this is still insane. This is still like a communication from the planet Pluto. I mean, it's utterly incredible, you know. And you can, this is well, as I say, well before I ever got into drugs. I was just a kid at the beginning of teenage, but I remember listening to it, just absolutely took my head off. And it has not lost one iota of its gloss to this day. I can still listen to it and absolutely be transfixed by everything on it, you know. And it doesn't sound old to me. It just is bursting with life. And you know, the production you've just got to overcome, but really the ideas and I still to this day scratch my chin at how half those sounds were generated.
Yeah, right.
It's just a guy in a studio. He didn't even have any pedals. There isn't even a wah-wah pedal on that first album. Yeah. There's a kind of a crude fuzz box, but I don't think there's any wah-wah at all. So it's just, sorry, rabbiting on.
No, please. Talk all about it. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the Sydney music scene, and we know how shit it is now, and what lockout laws have done, and things like that. Now, what do you remember as like the golden years in the Sydney music scene?
Okay, well,
because I wouldn't have said, I came to Sydney 94, I think it was. 94,
okay. Yeah. Well, there definitely were golden years, and they were well before my time. Up until my time, I must say, as a gigging musician working in music venues, clubs and pubs, I probably started in about mid to late 70s, and honestly, you could gig 7 nights a week if you wanted to, with ease.
Yep.
Easy. You just have to call people up. You'd have to be a good band, sure. You know, not a crap band. And I'm talking original stuff, not covers. You know, you'd have, God, the first band I was in, it was just originals. We didn't even think about doing covers. Covers was what wedding bands did, and I wasn't doing that crap anymore, you know. So we'd all write songs, and we'd go and get gigs. And we had our own PA. Oh my God, you know, it was just and honestly, you could gig as much as you wanted to. As I say, my daughter was born in 84. I stopped music completely, and I came back probably early 90s, totally different situation, you know. I got a band together, and I rehearsed 3 sets because that's what I'd done before.
Yep.
I went to get a gig, and the guy said, yeah, sure, you got 45 minutes. So I said, no, we've got 3 sets. We can do the whole night. And he said, no, I've got 3 bands on.
Oh.
And I went, oh, okay. And you're paying $600 for the whole night for 3 bands. And he said, yeah. And I mean, I didn't fight with him because I thought, well, I'm still learning what's happened. So it was a very short period of time that things kind of changed. Look, I don't really agree that that Sydney is up the shit. I don't.
Cool.
I don't.
Yeah, cool about that.
Okay. I've run my own graphic design business since 1981. Over that time, I have I've had high points and low points, but I've still survived.
Yeah.
You know, I've done jobs for free, hoping it'll lead to something else. In quite a few cases, it has. In a few cases, it hasn't. I don't care. That's what you do. Mm-hmm. Now, I've always applied that kind of thinking to music, which is one reason I've pulled back to the smallest modular unit I possibly can at the moment, because I thought the scene is definitely different. But I'm modifying I'm travelling light. I'm travelling really light. You know, the big band I had before, that was okay. That was then, and it was a struggle then. All music is a struggle. All life is a struggle. All business is a struggle. I don't know if I should really say this. You might want to apply one of your claps here, but I look at a lot of the musicians talking about how bad the scene is on Facebook, and I've never said it, but I often think, I wonder if there's any other industry where people complain so much about how difficult things are. I mean, I'm a graphic designer. I'm a graphic designer in a large city. There's a lot of work in Sydney, but there's also an awful lot of other very good graphic designers going for that work. So you have opportunity, and you have, your ability. So I've always worked to the current reality of it. Now, I'm sure a lot of musicians would shout me down about this, but I don't think it's so bad as long as you adapt yourself to what's going on.
Yeah, I think most people are. I think maybe those people that are saying and complaining so much are people that aren't really willing to adapt.
Yes.
They're just wanting it to stay like it was, and it's not like it was anymore, so it must be shit. You know? And
look, Stevie, as an old guy myself, I do find a lot of people of my generation go, well, why can't it be like the old days? But I mean, there's a very good answer for that. It can't be like the old days because it isn't the old days. It is what it is. Yeah, and I mean, I in every aspect of my life, I go, well, it is what it is. And I mean, you can't fight it. And if you take the energy that you would use, feeling bad about it and fighting it and complaining about it, and actually applying it to going, okay, how can I do what I want to do, but modify it in a way, and look, it's still a struggle. I'm not saying it's an answer. God, there's still weeks where I go, Jesus, how hard can it be? Mm-hmm. But then something comes up, and I go, cool. Okay, that's fine. That worked for me, and this worked for me. So until I can get absolutely no gigs or nobody interested to play with me, I'll just keep applying this to it. And I really love what I'm doing.
It definitely doesn't seem like that's happening for you. You're making it work, man.
Yes, I guess I am. Look, there's always an enormous amount of luck involved. And really, I think with any business or any venture you have in your life, the trick is to be ready when opportunity comes up.
Yep.
Look, one of my favourite people in the Sydney music scene is Loz Benson. Do you know of her?
I do.
Yes, she's fabulous. Yep. She played in my JHD Revival Band. Yep. Just a cracker player, wonderful player. So, next thing I know, here she is touring all over the world with John Butler.
Yep.
And nailing it. And I had lunch with her after she came back, just the same sweet Loz. And she looks at me and she says, so what have you been doing? I think, what are you talking about? What have I been doing? What have you been doing? But, humble. Yeah. Humble, and a lot of that comes from her family culture. The Bensons are incredibly forward-thinking, positive people. They just go, well, get on with it.
Yeah.
And she's applied that. and whatever comes up in her musical life, she's just ready for it, you know. But she hasn't changed as a person. And I know loads of people like that. They're bursting with talent and ability, and things bob up for them, and they just nail it with a smile on their face, you know. And they're the sort of people that I love, because I know how hard it is to do that. It's all too easy to sort of sit back and go, oh, woe is me, things ain't happening the way I want them to. Well, you know, where's that in the job description? You know, I mean, whoever said that things would happen because you wish them to happen like that, you know? I'm very lucky in that my mother hit me with the Protestant work ethic very early on. She was German. She survived the Second World War, as my father did. So I grew up in a household of people who survived the Second World War. So really, my problems are very, very small compared. No, really. I mean, it sounds a bit silly, but it's true. I grew up with these people, and they didn't complain about it. And when I found out their history, I thought, wow, you know, you got through that. My pimples really aren't such a big problem.
That's great. Let's talk a little bit more about the JHD Revival Band.
Okay, the JHD Revival Band. Well, as I said, it grew amazingly out of just a small jazz trio, and then I got double bass players, and it was a jazz thing, and then I went to see. I was doing a gig at the Tokyo Hotel at Darling Harbour, and there was another band on there, which was a rockabilly band. Band was terrible, drummer was fantastic. That was Loz Benson. She was a drummer. And I said to her in the break, man, you know, where did you learn to play a shuffle like that? Because for some odd reason, that is how I judge a drummer. I don't know why, but they can be as funky as, but a shuffle to me, just to my ear, separates the sheep from the goats, because it's not just the shuffle, I'm not telling you anything, but as you know, it's all those little suggested ghost notes around the beat, you know. Some people play a shuffle like a typewriter. It sounds terrible, you know. But Lozzie just played this beautiful, juicy, flowing shuffle. I just thought it was gorgeous. Anyway, I said to her, where'd you learn to play shuffle like that? And she said, oh, is it bad? I said, it's incredible. Then I met her mum and dad, and I realised where she learned to play the shuffle from. They had steeped her and her sister Emily in classic rock, you know, great, you know, stuff. So they'd listen to all the canned heat and all that stuff. And anyway, I said to Jeff, Lozzie said to me, oh, look, you know, my sister sings. Can she sing with the band? And I thought, oh, you know, here we go, you know, somebody's sister who sings, you know, I've had that before. And anyway, Emily did one gig with us and blew my head off. You know, I just thought, she is incredible. And I said to Jeff, her dad, look, man, I'd love her to be in my band. Is that cool with you? You know, he said, no. And I went, what? I said, is everything cool? And he said, oh, yeah, she can be in your band next year. I said, well, why? What's wrong with this year? He said, this year I wanted to concentrate on her HSC. Oh, yeah. That's how young she was. Yeah, right. You know, incredible. So Emily, she joined my band, and her voice was like so soulful and strong. I thought I've just got to toughen the band up, you know. So you know, I got the bass player to play electric bass.
Was he not playing electric bass?
She was playing acoustic bass because we were doing a jazz thing. But Emily's voice, I just could hear that it needed to get pumped up a bit, you know, move away from jazz, more into the like soul, rhythm blues, funk, and you know, got a conga player, and bit by bit, you know, like look, we did a party, and Ed Hughes. He was picking up a friend of his from the party, and he picked up a tambourine. He just started to play the tambourine. I thought, you know, as a drummer, you know how hard it is to play the tambourine properly, well, you know. So he was playing this tambourine, and I said to him, man, you know, do you play any other percussion? He said, yeah, I play congas and timbales. I said, would you like to join a band? So before I knew it, I had a 9-piece band, you know, lot with three horns, 3 saxophones, just incredible. And I was like a pig in shit. I would sit at home and I would write out arrangements. I was just like in heaven, you know. I'd write arrangements. We would do some originals. Even the covers, I would take them apart and pull them to, you know, put them back together again. Absolutely, just in heaven doing this stuff. Show up to the rehearsal, put the charts in front of everybody, count it in, and after the first run through, I'd say, guys, remind me, why are we rehearsing again? Because they just nail this shit down. I was just so beautiful, you know. It was just an absolute utter pleasure. I must say, in that band, at the 9-piece, 4 guys, 5 girls, and it made the whole experience beautiful.
Fantastic.
You know, everybody got on. The vibe was lovely. You know, it was just a lot of fun. You know, and I mean, I'm not a blokey bloke. And I've enjoyed, you know, being in bands with blokes, but just having this mix of you know, young and old. It was a very diverse band in every way, and that was a real big part of it, you know. And the actual full name of the band was the JHD Revival Band and Travelling Medicine Show. Because when I remember looking at a picture of the band going, you know, we've got so much in this band. You know, we got so many different people. It looks like one of those cool kind of, you know, ragtag, like I'm a very visual person, and the band just looked great, you know. Like, you know, there was and you know, people would come and see us, and they'd go, God, a lot of girls in that band, and I didn't really think of it like that. I thought, well, yeah, so what, you know? I mean, but it was a heck of a thing. It was a really interesting looking band, sounding band. Everything about it was just absolutely fantastic. And I was very fortunate that we were supported hugely by a couple of venues. Lazy Bones we played a number of times, which was great because the stage there is really big. I don't remember. Do you remember the Mac? The Mac Hotel? Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, well, that was a great funky house, you know, and I pushed Nathan for gigs there for a long time, and he didn't really respond. And then one day he said, look, we've had a band drop out. Can you do this? And I went, yes. I didn't even ask the band because I thought, I'm going to ask the band. If one of them dares to say no, I will go to their house. I will kidnap them. I will put them in my van and they will do the gig. Correct. No, but through incredible serendipity, they could all do that night. And it was a cracker. And we played, you know, heaps of nights at the Mac. The other one was the Townie, a wonderful Townie at Newtown. And Sally there, we couldn't fit on the stage, so she would arrange that half the rhythm section was on the stage, the horns, me and the singer were like on the floor, you know. And Sally would set, you know, she'd set up 1 million mics, but she just really made it sound great, you know. So I thank all of those venues for putting up with a very logistically difficult band, but I think all the venues and the people involved appreciated that it takes a while to get this band set up and happening, but once it happens, it's a very happening band. You know, and I know there's many people who came to see the band that it just knocked their socks off, you know. Right. So I couldn't be prouder of that band. I'll never do it again because it's one of those things that, I think when you're young, there's a lot of things you do because you don't know that it can't be done. You know. So I think that was a thing for me. I didn't know how difficult it was to drag a 9-piece band of cracker musicians around Sydney. I didn't know how difficult it was. So I did it. Now I'm old and I think I'll never do that again. which is stupid, really.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, I'm very happy with what I'm doing now. I feel very good about it, and it's the exact opposite.
Yep.
Nothing is really arranged.
Yep.
There's no charts.
Yep.
There's a jazz thing of head charts, counting stuff in, seeing what happens. Everybody's got big ears, and it's that's the other way I like to make music.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it's a beautiful way of making music. You know,
Yep.
Especially with people who, even though I don't necessarily play jazz, it's more blues now. I like to play with jazz players because they really, you can throw jazz players in at the deep end with the barest skeleton of the song,
Yep.
and they can just sound great. You know, it's just that incredible education that they have to undergo. You know, which I've never done. So I utterly admire these people. You know, I look at these people and I think, man, you're 22 years old. How the hell can you do that? You know? It kills me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just kills me.
Yeah. So are you looking to the future?
Yeah, well,
music-wise?
yes, but
Yep.
I think the future, in the past, the future used to be a much more defined thing. I used to go, right, 6 months we're going to do an album.
Okay.
Going to do that.
Oh, sorry, you guys did an album with the JHD Revival?
I did 2 albums with.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Are they available for...
Yeah, they are. I'm going to give you a couple.
Well, I'll link them in the show notes.
Yeah, sure.
So people
Okay.
can
Yeah,
find
cool.
them and...
Yeah, wonderful. No, we did an EP, which was a live EP,
Yep.
and then we did a recording with Michael Wheatley
Yep.
at Nut and Butter Studios. He was our keyboard player at the time.
Yep.
He did a wonderful job. Did an album, both of which sound absolutely fantastic. So I'm very glad to have some kind of record of that band.
Yep.
To have never recorded it would have killed me. I think that would be. In fact, I'd probably get it back together in just to record.
Great.
Because really to have nothing like I mean, it was just a hell of a thing. But like the future now is a lot less kind of defined. Normally I kind of work out some kind of strategy over the following year, because like booking agents like to know that there's, you're doing their gig as an event, and you like to say to them, we're launching something, or we're relaunching something, or something special about it. And I think that kind of makes sense. It's really good, rather than just saying, come to my gig, it's a great gig. But the current unit, I'm just taking it a little bit kind of easier.
Awesome.
On that. Yeah, just actually enjoying it in a slightly more day-to-day kind of thing, whatever the gig comes up. So I might have a gig and, person A might be able to do it, which is a case of a gig that's coming up. So I've found a whole other person that hasn't never been in my orbit, but is now in the orbit. So that's cool. I mean, that to me, I love the idea of the fact that, you really have no idea. I have no idea what this band is going to be this time next year.
Yep.
And I'm sure it'll be something that I entirely didn't predict. Yeah. So just chilling, being very zen-like.
Very good.
Yeah,
I think on that, John Hardaker, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Stevie.
Can't wait to get your story out there.
Sweet.
Cheers, my
Lovely man. Thank you,
very
sir.
much, mate. Cheers.